Hi, this is Warlow from Business Loan Services and welcome to my Friday Business Finance Bulletin, my weekly roundup of news, tips, ideas and strategies on raising finance and dealing with banks. So what am I looking at today? Well, late payment and some tips from Steve White from Thornbury Collection Services on collecting your debts. I'm also looking at the asset finance industry and your credit report and how you need to keep an eye on one very important creditor. So let's start off with asset finance. Now, I'm a great fan of asset finance. Asset finance allows you to purchase vehicles, plant, equipment, machinery, whatever it may be. It's a good alternative to the traditional bank loan. The reason I love it so much is quicker and easier than going down the traditional bank route. It also spreads your risk as well instead of having all of your eggs sitting in one basket. Well, the finance industry is actually booming. News from the Finance and Leasing Association this week showed that in the month of April, the business volumes that they did increased by 10% when compared to the same period in 2013. Now, when you think about the fact that bank lending is shrinking by 3 or 4% per year, to see a 10% increase in asset finance is superb. But even more interestingly, when you look at the figures underneath it, there's been a 25% increase in the amount of deals done for purchase of commercial vehicles. And there's been a 27% increase in financing new plants and equipment and machinery. So it just shows not only are people beginning to re-gear and reinvest in the businesses again, people are also actively going to seek out asset finance facilities. If you want to know if asset finance facilities will suit you, please get in touch with me or the team. Drop us a line at info@businessloanservices.co.uk and we'll point you in the right direction. Now, credit reports. Now, credit reports are becoming an increasingly important way of banks analysing whether you're going to be good for the money or not. Particularly at the lower end of the deal, anything £25,000 and below, to be honest, probably the only thing the bank will really look at is what's your credit report like. So it's important that you keep your file clean. Now, one creditor that people think is insignificant is mobile phone contracts. Now, they think it's insignificant because of the small amounts involved, but mobile phone companies are very, very quick at putting defaults on your credit file. Now, research recently came out from Ocean Finance and they had a look at this issue and they found that 18 to 24-year-olds, 23% of them said that they have missed payments on their mobile phone contracts. On average, it's about 14% of those surveyed said they've missed payments. Now, the problem is that can be enough sometimes for a bank to say no. And in fact, I had one client recently who thought he had a very clean credit record because he didn't borrow anything. And well, unfortunately, that doesn't make you a good credit risk because the banks have nothing to assess you on. You have no track record. But he thought he was great until he went to try and get a facility and was declined because of a poor credit record. Now, he couldn't think why. And on discovery, he went and had a look at his credit file and unbeknownst to him and in a distant memory, he remembers having a dispute with his mobile phone company. And he'd left a very small debt, £20, £30. But they'd issued a default. And because it was the only entry on his credit file, and it being a negative one, it was enough to give him the lowest rating possible. So please, make sure you keep those mobile phone contracts up to date and tackle hard any issues on disputes so they don't go registering a default. Now, late payment. Late payment is always a big issue for businesses. In fact, I was in Bangor this week doing a seminar for the Lead Wales programme, which is a programme for entrepreneurs. And I did a quick survey there asking how many of them felt that late payment was one of the things that kept them awake at night. And over half of the audience put their hand up. So it's a big problem. In fact, the government's recognised this because Vince Cable has said that the government is now looking to issue a consultation paper on how it tackles the problem of late payment. They want to see some of the contractual barriers removed that prevent business owners accessing invoice discounting or factoring. They also want to work closer with trade bodies and their members to raise awareness of the alternative sources of finance to alleviate cash flow and also raise awareness of the things that you can do to speed up payment. Unfortunately, one thing they're not going to insist upon is naming and shaming, which is a shame because there's nothing better to try and get somebody to pay you than seeing their name up in lights. So it'll be interesting to see what that consultation paper brings. On the topic of late payment, I was lucky enough to have a chat this week with Steve White from Thornbury Collection Services. Now, Steve is a public speaker on the topic of cash flow solutions and recently spoke at Accountex in London. So I was privileged just to be able to grab a couple of minutes with Steve and to ask him to share 2 or 3 things that we can do in order to make sure that we don't get caught out by late payment. So let's go to Steve now.
So my 3 tips for you today are: issue promptly, make sure your invoice is correct. I can think of 16 points that need to be on your invoice. How many are on your invoice? If you need a hand, ask me. Secondly is your T's and C's. Make sure they're correct, make sure they look right, get them sorted out correctly by a solicitor, and make sure you make reference to the Late Payment Commercial Debts Act, because that was amended with about a year ago, and there's some really important amendments in there. And my 3rd tip is don't be afraid to chase. You provided the goods or service, your due payment, just ring. Don't email, ring. Listen to their voice, help them if need be. Thank you.
So there we are, some quick tips from Steve on what you can do to ensure you don't get caught out by late payment. So that's it for this week. I hope you enjoyed those tips and ideas. As ever, if you did, please like this video, please share it amongst your colleagues. So that's it. I hope you have a great and profitable and successful week this week, and I look forward to being with you again next Friday. Thanks very much.